Thanks each and everyone for lending me your ears. My name is Nana Bonsu from the Birmingham Business School, University of Birmingham. Today we're going to be looking at reimagining responsible business and sustainability from the lens of the net zero emissions transition. And I think many a times what we normally see is that the transition to net zero emissions has some sort of been looked within the lens of being linear and when it comes to silo thinking, as opposed to thinking through when it comes to the impacts within the ecosystem services, as Lam made mention of. So looking at my net zero research journey, it all began from 2015 after my PhD. So after my PhD, the question was to whether to work within the industry or continue within the area of academia. But then I think I would say that, is it fortunately or unfortunately enough, I ended up within the industry, working with the local authorities in UK within the area of transport, infrastructure and environmental policies and projects, which was quite good, getting some of understanding within the area of when it comes to the sustainable transport measures. And I think through that understanding when it comes to the impacts of road transport, which contributes almost about 92% when it comes to the greenhouse gas emission in the UK, I think that's when it influenced my thinking. And then I was working on a project with one of the local authorities. And then when it comes to, I think that was the time that the electric vehicles revolution started popping up, and then local authorities started adopting it. And I think it was within that same time frame that a road to zero emission policy was initiated as well. And trust me, I took time to read through the policy document, and then finding those kind of incoherencies and all those kind of linear way of thinking that moved me back into academia. And I think within that time, that was 2018, then I had two jobs. One, continue working with the local authority, or go back into academia, which the local authority work was permanent and the academia was fixed term contracts. Good money, less money, but what do you do? But then I continue with the academia. But then my previous background too, I've worked as a production engineer within the mining sector back in Ghana. And I understand this field. So what triggered my interest within the area of this kind of net zero emission research was that we all realized that the battery remains the heartbeat when it comes to the transition to electric vehicles. And then working within this kind of space, knowing where the critical raw materials are coming from, I said, okay, no, let me explore these issues much more better, because you read through the road to net zero within UK. So where will all these kind of critical raw materials come from? And then we know all these kind of illegal activities, mining activities within some of these kind of developing countries. We have issues, for example, in Ghana, Chinese companies coming in when it comes to some sort of irresponsible business practices within some of these kind of mining communities, and then causing some sort of conflict with the locals. And as for the impact on biodiversity, or when it comes to the ecosystem services, that one is crazy. You know? Like if you look at the second picture here, you could see how all these kind of like waters or like the rivers, they have turned into mud. When it comes to deforestation, that one too is on a massive scale. Now, so based on that, you try to understand the winners and losers within the transition to net zero emission. And then you realize that, oh, okay, the transition is happening at the global north, whereby the critical raw materials are coming from the global south. And then, for example, you're looking at some of the critical raw materials, looking at the cobalt, which is quite crucial when it comes to the lithium-ion batteries chemistry. You have the manganese as well, and you have the nickel, you have the, like some of these kind of critical raw materials. Now, so within that kind of space, try to work on something within the UK context, trying to understand for business, including the government and policyholders, how some of these kind of policies work in practice and how they are implemented based on their understanding. And then when it comes to net zero emission, what it actually means. So as I said, if you look at the raw materials, you can see that they are crucial when it comes to UK's transition. And then you also realize that 80 to 90% of these kind of rare earth elements are produced in China when it comes to the lithium-ion batteries components. If you look at this particular data, you could see all the batteries, the wind farms, when it comes to the materials, processed materials, the components, assembly, all coming from like China holding when it comes to the total production share. So as part of the research, and looking at the motivation, trying to problematize the study, I come to that kind of understanding that the transition to net zero emissions with that kind of circularity thinking is some sort of meaningless because it doesn't make sense. So trying to look at it from the global, when it comes to the circular economic thinking. And if you look at it, as I said, you have ethical issues within places like DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. We have the, when it comes to water stress and scarcity within places like Chile. And then you're looking at the EV infrastructure to a whole lot of issues when it comes to, you don't have an EV non-equal EV charging networks. And when it comes to consumers like you and I, looking into the battery after the first phase life, what are we going to do with it? Are there any kind of proper mechanisms or circular economy practices in place, being the modular kind of type of circular economy practices? But then you could see that you have nothing of that sort in place. Now, so I designed this particular conceptual framework. We try to go through all the different phases within the thinking of circular economy. And you could see that the concept of circular economy usually was linked to when it comes to waste management, but you try to go much more deeper, and you could see that it's not always about waste, but it also addresses issues within the landscapes when it comes to ecosystem and services as well. So for example, looking at the sustainability footprint analysis, issues with value chain when it comes to equitable job creation, impact on biodiversity, human rights issues, as well as building some sort of sustainable cities and communities. So you try to close the loop, try to think about what consumers know, thinking about what, let's say, like more about the industry. For example, looking at the auto sales companies, what they know as well when it comes to the battery makeup, what are they going to do about it? And they look into the use phase as well when it comes to the remanufacturing or repurposing of the lithium-ion batteries. What are some of the things that are being done when it comes to policy development and when it comes to the waste too? And then material disposal, how are they going to do it? So this is the output from the study. And then a paper was published in Journal of Cleaner Production. And if you look at some of the issues within the raw materials extraction, you could see that the greenhouse gas emissions and some sort of, when it comes to energy intensive process involved in mining and processing raw materials. If you look into the manufacturing as well, you could see that the UK supply chain, some sort of rely on China and other Asian countries in EV battery cell manufacturing and raw material sourcing. But I think things are becoming much more better now when it comes to new measures being developed to upscale battery production within UK. And you look into distribution and sales when it comes to lack of innovation in consumer EV experience, including a government-led transition plan from ICE to EVs. So if I say ICE, it's more about the internal combustion engines for the diesel and petrol cars too. And I think if you look at that time to date, you don't see a lot being done in those kind of space. You're looking to use, you could see that lack of business models closing loop to stimulate some sort of resource efficiency in EV battery circular economy. And then you look into research and innovation issues with when it comes to lack of infrastructure to deal with the end of life cells that come back into the supply chain. There were some sort of limitations as well when it comes to thinking through the circular economy thinking. And what I realized was that it is not immune from scrutiny because it doesn't automatically build some sort of long-term resilience when it comes to the socio-ecological systems within the value chain, or as well as when it comes to some sort of robust mechanisms within value chains networks. And then, so different thinking start popping out. And you try to look into how you're going to be accounting for some of this kind of accounting for circular economy. How is it going to look like? So let's say you try to map up or plot all the stakeholders within the value chain. So for example, taking into a mining company like Glencore operating in Democratic Republic of Congo when it comes to cobalt mining, or dealing with the Chinese company in China when it comes to, so how are you going to account for those kind of circular economy when it comes to their footprint analysis? So trying to work on some sort of paper, looking into accounting for circular economy and trying to see how this thing could be matched with the SDGs, because that's the language that everybody's trying to look within the area of sustainability. Now, I think my time is getting out, I have to speed up. And then there was this a paper as well looking into when it comes to equity within UK sales of EVs as well. And you could see some sort of a real injustice between the rich versus poor when it comes to ownership in decarbonizing the transport sector. So another research back into, I think if you taking into account, let's say climate change issues or net zero, I don't think it's only the problem within Western world. We also have to think about how it's being transitioned within the developing countries as well. So going to the global south, case study back in Ghana, thinking about how they understand the issues. And you could see that trying to do the analysis, see that some of the old privately owned vehicles releasing some sort of emissions when it comes to black smoke, and then issues with catarrh, asthma. And then when I did a project, what was it 2 years ago in Ghana, measuring some of the air pollutants within most of the cities. And then if you look at values for the PM10 and then NOx levels, trust me, it's across, it surpasses the World Health Organization guidelines. So the question is, how do we move forward when it comes to some of these things, addressing issues within the low medium income countries context? And you can see that policies when it comes to decentralization, that is what we're trying to, a new project that I'm working on is just trying to look into as part of the recommendations, because air pollution is much more about local issues. So it must be, decisions have to be made at a local level as opposed to the top down. And then there's this issue as well when it comes to all the ICE vehicles in, let's say, in the developed countries, as they are transitioning to the EVs, where are they going? So you realize that the high polluting cars are being sent to poor countries or the developing countries, which are contributes to all these kind of air pollution within low medium income countries. And there's that one issue that as well when it comes to policy feasibility, when it comes to the politics as well as aspect of it. Working on this new project, looking into climate change, health impact, and net zero emissions in Ghana. This case study, that was March, conducting some sort of scenarios and development workshop, whereby bringing stakeholders within one case study to develop when it comes to the future design goals, trying to understand the issues, the business as usual, and trying to build some sort of scenarios, the participatory type of. And these are some of the issues: low rainfall and fishing stock within that particular community. You could also see, based on their met projections, some sort of temperature rising from 0.6 degrees to some sort of 2 degrees by 2030. So real issues going up in there. And then when it comes to education, it remains an issue. So this is a new research sample under development, and happy to look for some sort of, when it comes to institutional collaboration, which would be quite good, trying to looking into orchestrating net zero emissions transition and circular economic policy development in the UK. So that's it. So finally, I think based on my journey when it comes to the transition to net zero emissions, what I'm just trying to know or trying to crystallize that I think, is it going to be requiring some sort of participatory scenarios development to help localize net zero emissions? Or is it becoming from, let's say, the COP26, whereby you see leaders trooping into, let's say, Glasgow, having good lunch, spending money without any meaningful some sort of policies? So thank you very much.